All right, everybody, welcome back to Salt City Counseling. Once again, my name is Scott Carter. I'm a licensed therapist here in the beautiful state of Utah. If you're new here, I hope that you will hit that subscribe button. In this video, I'm going to continue my healing narcissistic trauma, kind of in piecemeal. I do at least one video a week on healing narcissistic trauma. I publish those videos on Sundays. And, I was just sitting today. I was meditating. I was really contemplative. I was thinking about how I personally want to make a contribution to the world and society and culture. Having worked in mental health for 20 years now, I am really, I feel like seeing things kind of in a different light. If you watch my Healing Narcissistic Trauma series, if you watch my channel, I talk a lot about how I feel like conventional therapy really has its limitations. How conventional therapy has not done a terribly good job these days. I mean, therapists are people too. We fall into patterns and habits, and we don't question our limits. Not all of us question our limits, right? Or not all of us look beyond of what's possible or what we could be doing better. But I try to do that. And so this morning, it's not morning anymore. Today, I was thinking about like how I want to contribute, my individual contribution. I was actually watching a video. It was a presentation from Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield. He's the guy that wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul, or one of the guys that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and he was talking about like think about what you make goals of what you want your individual contribution would be. And so I was meditating on it. A lot of inspiration came through. I was really grateful for it. Lots of positive things came through for me. So one of the things that I was thinking about and kind of came through for me, and I kind of got a little bit of a download when I was meditating, and it was really like, what is it that I really want people to know? What is it that I really want people to hear? And one of those things is understanding the frantic self versus the true self, focusing on the true self. And I've talked about this in healing narcissistic trauma before, where it's like trying to remain attached, or like trying to stay committed to repairing this old self, or what I call the frantic self, or what I'm just calling the frantic self, is not terribly effective. And a lot of conventional therapy will want to stay attached to that frantic self. And I prefer to look at people in the terms of like, and I've already kind of introduced these ideas. If this is your first video here, go check out my other video. I talk about this stuff at length, or my other videos. I have all of this stuff in my videos at length, and just the idea of like a new self. And the new self really to me is like the true self. Now, in this video, I'm gonna talk about the frantic self first, so that you can understand, so you start to make the separation from the frantic self and move into the true self. Now, I had someone come to session yesterday, had some excellent insights. I was super proud of this person because they've come such a long way in such a short amount of time. It was really, really positive to see. I was very grateful for it. This person has had a very troubled history, really troubled past. But this person came to session yesterday and was talking about how they recognized that there was an emptiness about them, that perhaps there's a lack of sense of self outside of that, the shameful self or the frantic self. The frantic self is steeped in shame. That's one of the things I'm going to get into here in this video. The features of the frantic self. Now, beyond this video, I don't want to put too much effort into it. I don't want to put too much energy into it. We put too much energy into reinforcing the negatives. We put too much focus and energy, like we just reinforce what we want to go away. And I've kind of known this for years about adolescent behavior, and and I've told parents for years, like, you got to be careful what behaviors you reinforce. But the same is true for ourselves, right? So too many of us are reinforcing the frantic self, and when the frantic self is the one that we want to retire. We want to let that part of ourself just go the way of the dodo. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about some of those features of the frantic self, so you can just start recognizing when it pops up, and start recognizing that, hey, a true self exists. I just need to start putting more and more and more energy into the true self. And when I put more and more energy into the true self, then I'm going to graduate and I'm going to move on from this trauma. The fear will shed. I talk about this all the time when it comes to narcissism. If you've been at the heart or the recipient, I'm going to scoot in just a bit more actually. If you've been at the receiving end of any type of narcissistic abuse, then there's going to be a lot of fear involved. You're just going to feel afraid. You're going to feel small and worried and afraid. And the trick is when you no longer are afraid of the narcissist, whatever form they may take. I believe the narcissism takes a lot of forms. But when you're no longer afraid of narcissists and narcissism, it loses its power over you. It has no power. None. It's gone. It's really nice, actually. So I'm going to get into the features of the frantic self, and in a different video, I'm going to start getting into more and more features of the true self, and developing the true self, and what the true self looks like. You kind of want to think of it as sorts as almost like this nebulous glob, and that's great because you get to form it into whatever you want. But the frantic self is going to feel afraid of doing that. Okay, and so I'm going to get into this short list of the features of the frantic self. But first, let me get some housekeeping out of the way. If you're new here, I hope you will subscribe. I'm hoping that by the time that this video publishes, my new channel for therapy for teens, for young people, for youth, will be launched. It's called 10,000 Ronin. It's already up. I just don't have any content on there yet. At least not right this second. The channel has been created, but it's called 10,000 Ronin, or 10K Ronin. I have to look. It's basically like after this archetype of the Ronin. It's a samurai without a master, or samurai that kind of follows dark paths or loses its way, loses his or her way, right? And so go check it out. I'll put it in the description below. So go check out that channel. It's going to be for young people. I know that this particular channel is really heady. It's really dense. Not a lot of great content for young people who are trying to navigate their youth. If you really like my content, hit the tip jar, please. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. If you have a viewer question, I really like viewer questions. They're very helpful. They're very positive. Please send them my way. Your feedback is invaluable. scottc at saltcitycounseling.com. By the way, I don't respond to attacks. I get them, and I refuse to put energy into them. I'm more than happy to engage people who want to have an honest discussion or give honest feedback or give honest criticism or are even willing to change their minds. But generally, right, we don't live in that era. We just live in an era where people just want to attack. I don't respond to it. I don't respond to personal attacks. So let me get into this video. There's probably a couple other things I want to take care of with housekeeping, but it's all good. So features of the frantic self. Okay, the first thing that I have here is that people who have the features of the frantic self. Here's, you know what, before I get into this list, here's what you need to know about the frantic self. Is it's a defense mechanism. It developed, or it came up, or was produced out of a survival, out of the need to survive, out of a need to avoid pain. And unfortunately, the frantic self actually has not succeeded. The frantic self does not actually protect you from pain. It does a very, very poor job. And that's why it's called the frantic self. It's totally irrational. It thinks it's doing what helps it avoid pain. And maybe sometimes you roll the dice and the frantic self is able to avoid pain. But let's be honest, the frantic self actually creates a lot of pain. All the worry, all the overthinking, all the self-scrutinization, right? And all the fear and all the worry and this paralyzing fear of making mistakes, having those mistakes seen by others. It's paralyzing fear that it's not okay to make mistakes, okay? And so let me get into this list here. The frantic self, first of all, have irrational fears of several things. But what's important to understand about these irrational fears is that it feels dangerous. It feels like you're going to be physically harmed, physically killed. That's how intense it feels when it's not. It's actually not harmful. It's like there's a ton of smoke, but there's no fire. You can't actually get burned by smoke. That's all it is. And so really, it's an illusion. But a lot of the things that the frantic self is irrationally afraid of are anger and disapproval. Just morbid fear, irrational fear of anger. Any kind of anger, including their own. And I'm going to, down the road, talk about why you're going to need some anger. Anger is very misunderstood in general. There's different types of anger, and we have one word to describe all kinds of anger, even though some of them are actually helpful. Some of them are actually empowering and useful for at least small periods of time. Okay, so also irrationally afraid of doing good things for oneself. Okay, the frantic self probably learned that if they did good things for themselves, the narcissist or someone who had borderline came after them, just absolutely attacked them, just eviscerated them. You selfish person, you super selfish person. But one of the ballad of the narcissist is you're a horrible person unless you pay attention to what's me. That's it. You're good if all of your mental efforts and your behaviors are focused on me and gaining my approval, but you do it for yourself and you're evil. That's narcissism. That's just narcissism. Okay. There's a irrational fear of vulnerability, admitting that there was mistakes, and saying like, yeah, I screwed up. I'm changing. I'm growing. I'm learning. That's part of being a human being. I even get some of that stuff. Like I have no issue with admitting some of my mistakes. I make them every day. And there's absolutely there's certain people that have absolutely no qualms with seeing that vulnerability and pouncing on it. That's narcissism. Narcissists will always pounce on your vulnerability, but if you're not afraid of them doing that, they can't hurt you. They actually can't hurt you. So some other features of the frantic self: shame. The shame of not being perfect. The shame of not being good enough. I highly recommend Brene Brown's material, her content on shame. Highly recommended. Daring Greatly, I believe, is one of her books. The Gifts of Imperfection is another one of her books. They're very good books. Her material is excellent on shame. I highly recommend those. But there was one more feature of the frantic self. I meant to write it down. I meant to put it in my notes, but those are some of the main points. So the idea here is to recognize, like, is my fear irrational? What am I irrationally afraid of? So if you've got your notebook, you're taking notes on all of my healing narcissistic trauma videos and content, I want you to write this down. What am I irrationally afraid of? What feels like it's going to physically harm me but does not physically harm me? It only hurts me emotionally, okay? Now the thing is, what you have to understand is that the narcissist isn't actually hurting you. Your frantic self that is maladaptive is actually hurting you. And so the idea is that even though it meant well for you, it wanted good things for you, it was trying to help you, it's got to go. We need to retire it. There's lots of ways to do that. Don't fight it. Don't beat it up. I saw a great meme this morning on the ego. I subscribe to all sorts of spirituality subreddits. And one of them was a meme where someone had this baton or stick and was beating them and and it just said self on the stick, and the person doing the beating, the person receiving it. And you don't heal from beating yourself up. You don't look at your frantic self and say, I hate you, get away from me, and beat it up. That doesn't work. That's actually not helpful. You're actually reinforcing it if you do that. Instead, we want to try to come at it from a, you know what, you did your best. This mentality of you kept me alive, you got me through some things. I know that you were doing your best. I know you felt like you were doing something good. And nurturing it and caring about it and treating it with compassion. So that's what you kind of want to do. That's the direction that you want to move in. Okay, so in my next video, well, maybe not the next video, but down the road, so make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'm going to talk about features of the true self. And I'm going to really dive into true self. We're going to do a lot of true self-worth work. Okay? And put a lot of energy and efforts into true self. That's the idea. That's how you grow. That's how you actually heal. Okay. So your take homes, I want you to write this down. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. Don't hate the frantic self. Okay. Try to look at it with some compassion, some empathy. Okay. You got to get to work soon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.